for a further analysis of President Trump's call with China's Xi Jinping today. And joining me to give his assessment now is Gordon Chang. He's a senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute and also author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. By the way, you can follow him on X under the handle at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always good to have you.
Thank you so much, Jody.
Okay, so we've got the phone call between Trump and China's President Xi today, and they say that progress was made in regard to TikTok as well as other very important issues, including things like trade, fentanyl, and the Russia-Ukraine war and so forth. But I got to tell you, Gordon, that kind of makes me scratch my head of what would be considered progress, both for America and maybe progress for China. It seems like we've been at a standstill for a long time. What does progress look like at this point?
Well, progress, according to President Trump in his Truth Social posting today, said that Xi Jinping actually approved the TikTok deal. But we don't know the terms of the deal, Jody, and that is absolutely crucial. There are three things here. There's ownership, data security, and the curation of the algorithm. And it appears on the first two that President Trump got a really good deal from the Chinese. The third one we don't know about, and that's the most important by far. That's the curation algorithm. This is the algorithm that determines what you see and what you don't see on the site. And clearly, China's been using the algorithm to create division in America, to meddle in our elections, to promote things like suicide and illicit drug use. This is really bad stuff. Now, the Wall Street Journal had some reporting a couple days ago that suggests that this is going to be okay from the U.S. point of view, but there were no details in the Truth Social posting, so we're going to have to wait to see what it's like.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the devil's in the details. Any idea when those details may be coming out?
Well, President Trump just gave a fourth extension to the federal ban on TikTok, and that extension expires December 17th. Apparently there's supposed to be a deal. We heard from Treasury Secretary Bessent a couple days ago that there will be further negotiations, but only really on very minor points. The major points have been agreed, according to the Treasury Secretary. So probably there won't be a fifth extension if all of these reports are true. But, you know, TikTok is really important. We know that the Chinese have used it to steal data from Americans. That, by the way, is a violation of federal law, which means under federal forfeiture statutes, we could actually just seize TikTok without compensation. So I'm not exactly sure why we feel we need to negotiate with the Chinese. I think that if we're going to negotiate with them, quote unquote, we ought to be just telling them what the terms are and then telling them they're either going to take it or leave it. And if they leave it, we're going to expropriate it.
Yeah, and if a deal is made, what assurances are there that they would not continue using it as an instrument to gather information? I guess that, again, it will be in the details that we'll find out in the weeks to come.
Yeah, the data security provision, apparently Oracle, which is one of the three companies that will own a combined 80% of the TikTok, will continue to provide cloud services. If that's the case, then Oracle should be able to provide data security to prevent the Chinese from doing what they've been doing. But then again, you know, as you wisely say, it's the devil's in the details. So I'd like to know what those data security provisions will be and how much control Oracle will have over the app.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know President Trump said that he and China's President Xi will be meeting face-to-face here, I think, in about 6 weeks in South Korea, and also said that he, by the way, will be visiting China, and at some point, President Xi will be coming here to the U.S. By the way, this is something that former President Biden didn't do his entire presidency. He never went to China. But what do you make of the plans for these two leaders to be meeting face-to-face in the future?
Well, I don't have any problem with Trump and Xi getting together on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in South Korea, but President Trump should not be the first to travel. You know, he said that he was going to go to China in the early part of next year and that eventually Xi Jinping would return the visit at an appropriate time. The Chinese are going to view this as Trump acknowledging his submission to the Grand Celestial Chinese Court, because this is the way the Chinese have been thinking about things for centuries, 2 millennia, actually. Although I know President Trump doesn't believe that he is a subordinate to the Chinese, that's the narrative that they are going to propagate around the world. And by the way, it makes it much harder for President Trump to actually be effective in diplomacy because people around the world accept the Chinese narrative. And that means they are going to be much more resistant to President Trump's initiatives than they otherwise would be, because they feel that China has the whip hand. So at this particular time, I think President Trump should not go to China.
Good point. So let me ask you this: with all the escalation that there's been between the U.S. and China over the recent Liberation Day tariffs that President Trump instituted, what's your feeling on the overall stand of things right now? How does it look?
I think we're doing a fairly good job, and President Trump deserves kudos for this, because as it stands, our tariffs are about 20% higher on Chinese goods than Chinese tariffs on our goods. Normally delay, and there's been a lot of delay in the final settlement of a tariff deal. Normally delay helps the Chinese because it means they can continue their predatory trade practices and continue to steal our intellectual property. This time, Trump has set these things up so delay helps us, because Trump is negotiating these trade deals with others, and that means we're directing trade away from China. So I think that this is a good thing for us, and I think the White House has been doing a good job on this when you consider on balance.
All right, last question for you has to do with Taiwan. What's your feelings on where things stand or where things may be going as it relates to China and Taiwan?
I've always been much more concerned about Chinese aggression against the Philippines and the South China Sea, specifically Scarborough Shoal, where there's been some very dangerous incidents in last month and this month. You know, if a war starts in East Asia, it's almost certainly going to start against the Philippines, not against Taiwan, because Taiwan is too hard a target. And there are a lot of other reasons why I don't think China would initiate hostilities by launching an invasion of the main island of Taiwan. But in any event, Taiwan will get involved in a crisis if there is a war against the Philippines, because the whole region probably will go to war for various reasons. So we've got to be concerned about Taiwan, but more important, we've got to be concerned about the Philippines. Wow.
There's so many hot potatoes out there that we're tossing back and forth. Thank you so much, Gordon Chang, Senior Fellow at the Gatestone Institute. Always an honor to have you. We deeply appreciate the tremendous insight that you bring.
Well, it's an honor for me to talk to you, Jody, so thank you very much, and God bless.